What's up, Vikings fans? Welcome back to another edition of the State of the Vikings position by position breakdown. As always, Ben Leber is here giving his thoughts on the current roster. And Ben, today we get to talk about the big boys up front on the defensive side of the ball, the interior defensive linemen. Personally, I'm excited about this group just due to the veteran guys that you got mixed with the young guys. But I don't think we can start this conversation off without talking about the big acquisition this offseason, Michael Pierce. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, first of all, Gabe, it's always good to see you. Man, we've done a few of these, and now we get into the interior of our defensive line where, yeah, like you mentioned, that's where the meat of the defense is, man. That's where personally, being an older school mentality guy, you have to win the trenches, and it starts up front. Obviously, offensive line, you have to put together a good offensive line. But then defensively, you've got to win up front. These guys up front can really, really help out the young secondary, the young corners on the outside, and not have those guys cover as much. If you can stop the run on first and second down, it's so cliche, but it's so true. And then, get after the passer on third down and passing situations. So you mentioned the juggernaut. The juggernaut. Big Michael Pierce. He comes over in free agency. Why the juggernaut? Well, he's 6 foot, 340 pounds. I mean, he pretty much fits the description of juggernaut. And he kind of plays with that style. I'm really excited about him because I think that Linval from years past, fresh into the season, was dominant. He did things strength-wise that it's kind of hard to believe until you see it with your own eyes. The way he could bench press players.
Four-man rush. They collapse on Rodgers, and he's sacked inside the 5-yard line. A big-time rush from Linval Joseph.
But, at the end of the seasons, he sort of got wore down. Injuries became an issue, and he wasn't quite as effective. Where I think Pierce, if he can get back to the way he played in 2018, where he was top 5 interior defensive lineman, number 4 against the rush in the entire NFL. Dropped off a little bit in 2019 because he even admits himself that gained a little bit of weight, got a little bit complacent, but now he understands what it's like to be a pro and have to take care of your business year round. So I'm looking forward to what the juggernaut can do. He's a big bowling ball that loves to stop the run. So he's exciting.
All right, so you got a good dose of veteran guys who've seen valuable playing time, and you have young guys. A young guy that stands out to me, Armon Watts, who week 17 last year, he exploded onto the scene. 3 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. And then you got a guy like Jaleel Johnson, who has seen some meaningful playing time also. I think those two guys, just speaking of that nose tackle position, that creates for some great competition heading into training camp. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the backup position behind Pierce is going to be interesting because there's 2 guys that have shown flashes when they've gotten in the games.
Rivers running out of time and goes down back at the 36. Jaleel Johnson, the third-year D lineman out of Iowa.
Let's just look at the height and weight. Jaleel's 6'3", 315 pounds. Pretty good size. Armon's 6'5", not quite 300. He's at about 295. So Armon he's a much longer, leaner player and probably much better and more polished as a pass rusher. And then you got Jaleel, who, when he came out of college, was known for his strength. Fits more of the prototypical size as a plus 300 pounder and is much better against the run, but then yet he suffers against the pass. So with limited number of roster spots, how are you going to find the balance between, and we haven't even got into 3 technique yet, but when you just look at those nose tackle guys, they're both very talented, but yet they're almost a stark contrast between how they play. One's a run stuffer, not quite as good in the pass. One's a pass rusher, not quite as good in the run. It's going to be interesting to see if they can hone in on their deficiencies in the offseason and really amplify those things and pick those up to become a strength. Man, you've got 2 really good players that could come in the fold, be a part-time player, be a rotational player, play with fresh legs, and be pretty darn good.
Speaking of a 3 technique spot, you got 3 guys right there: Shamar Stephen, Jalen Holmes, and James Lynch, three guys where James Lynch has pistol all everything in college. Jalen Holmes won a national championship, and then you got Shamar Stephen, who basically knows his defense inside out. So how do you think that plays itself out?
Well, Shamar, you would like to think that he is going to be the starter going into training camp, and he is. He will be penciled in at the starter, but I would say that's the one position up front that is really wide open. I think Shamar took a step back last year, got a nice little contract, but had never really become an every down player as a 3 technique. And although he made some plays, I just don't think that he was disruptive in a way a 3 technique should be in this particular defense. So he's going to have some competition, like you say, with Jalen Holmes, who, when he came out of Ohio State, everybody loved his athleticism.
Ball's out. Opportunity for the Vikings, and they've got it. Knocked away from Drew Brees, and it was recovered by Jalen Holmes, who just came into the ball game.
He's very athletic, and that's what you need as a 3 technique. And he has some burst, but I think that he's a little light, So if he can put on some weight and maintain that burst and explosion, well, I tell you what, don't be surprised if Jalen Holmes becomes more of a consistent starter. But then you bring in the guy from Baylor, the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, a guy in James Lynch. When you turn on the tape, you're going to say, nothing special. I mean, he's not particularly fast or twitchy. He doesn't have great moves. He's got kind of short arms. But then you see his production and you see the way he plays, and he's hard to move off the spot, and you see how disruptive he is. I mean, the guy, every game you watch, he's like, oh yeah, there's another tackle for loss for Lynch. Oh yeah, there's another guy. Oh, who was that quarterback? Who hit the quarterback? Oh, it was Lynch again. He just has a knack for making plays. And in this defense, as a 3 technique, you have to be disruptive. It doesn't have to be pretty. You have to be disruptive, though. And he's one of these disruptive forces that could come in and shake things up in training camp.
Lastly, we've talked about the defensive end pass rushers in our previous segment. But when you put this full defensive line group together, defensive ends / pass rushers and interior defensive linemen, what can Vikings fans expect out of these guys in the trenches? How good can this group be?
Well, they can be really good. I mean, it's going to come down to who's going to solidify one of the defensive end spots. Does Everson Griffen come back? That dramatically changes things if that's the case. If not, we have to have some of these younger guys stay hungry and play even better and more consistent than they did last year. I'd expect from this defensive front to feel a lot of pressure. They're going to feel a lot of pressure, and they are going to rise up, and I do expect that to happen. Andre Patterson, he's now co-defensive coordinator. Not only was the spotlight on him just from an important standpoint of being one of the most well-respected defensive line coaches and really coaches in all the NFL, now he's got a bigger title. And I think he's going to want to show everybody that the play of his defensive line is not going to wane because he's taken on more duties as a defensive coordinator. So those guys are going to rise up to the challenge. He's great about motivating these young guys. He's a tremendous teacher. I think we're going to have great things out of this young defensive front.
I'm excited to see these great things. And if you missed Ben's breakdowns of the defensive ends, pass rushers, or any of our breakdowns, make sure you head on over to Vikings.com to check out all of the things Vikings content related. Thanks, Ben.